Okay, so I wanted to talk about the main theme of Spider-Man Brand New Day. And the movie's been out for a couple of days now, and I wanted to this video will contain spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day. So if you have not seen that movie, uh just go ahead and click off this video right now and go see the movie. Um Go make your own opinion on the movie. Hopefully you enjoy it. I enjoyed this movie, but yeah, man. After seeing this movie and thinking about it ever since it came out, the main thing that I have come back to is not us seeing the Punisher for the first time in a Spider-Man movie, not seeing Savage Hulk again, which that was really cool. Not even like Jean Grey, or I guess the introduction of Jean Grey in the X-Men and everything into the MCU, or I guess the MCU version of the X-Men, or like and everything. My main takeaway from this movie, and I think the main takeaway that like a lot of people should have from this movie, is that connection, or having connections, is very important. I feel like this movie is a good thesis on the idea of needing to have connections, you needing human connections, us needing to be around other people, and everything. And I feel like this movie is definitely a driving force for that, mainly because at the beginning of this movie, and for most of this movie, Peter is alone. He is a loner. He spends most of his time being Spider-Man and preventing crimes and everything. But I feel like this movie definitely deals with Spider-Man, or Peter specifically, and his depression, and his lack of connection, and how that makes him, like, I guess, sick, you could say, because you could say that like him lacking these these emotional connections and isolating himself and everything made him sick and everything. And that's how he got the freaking the organic webbing thing, and that's why he was like freaking out and his eyes were turning black and everything. But you could say that was a metaphor for I guess his sickness of not having that human connection. It drove him to experience anger. It drove him to be just not in tune with like his, I guess, his powers, or like whatever. And yeah, you could say that's like a metaphor for people when they decide to be alone, or they decide to cut off human connections with people. You could say you could get physically ill from that. You can get mad, you can get angry, you can get sad, depressed. All those things apply when you don't have human connection. And I feel like this movie, not only with Spider-Man, because I feel like Spider-Man deals with that specifically in this movie. I mean, he's the main character and he deals with that with Ned and MJ and everything. But there are other characters in this movie. Like I said, there's the Punisher, the Hulk, Jean Grey. I feel like all those characters are other examples of loneliness, right? You could say that the Punisher, right, in this movie, he is alone. He spends most of his time, killing or killing criminals and everything. But he lives alone. Like we see in the movie, he lives on like some boat thing, and like literally the first scene is like is MJ in Spider-Man going to going to Punisher for help, basically. And we get a scene of like them arriving at, I guess, Frank's secret hideout, and there's literally just a bunch of booby traps and a bunch of things to like kill them essentially. And you could say that's like a kind of just a metaphor for Frank's just ability to not trust anyone, his ability to not trust people just in general, and everything. And so that makes him alone. Obviously you have the backstory of him losing his family and his wife and his kids and everything, and that drove him to be the lonely, isolated person that he is. And you could also say that, like, if Spider-Man never learned at the end of this movie to, or learn the importance of connection, you could say that Spider-Man could have ended up like Frank. I think Frank is a good example of a cautionary tale for Peter in this movie, to where, like, Frank, he even says in the movie, he says to Peter, hey, you think I chose this lifestyle? You think I chose to live this way? No, I didn't choose to live this way. This is all I have left, is what I do, basically. And he basically tells Peter that, like, hey, you don't have to live the way that I live. You still have a chance to connect with the people that you love and everything. Jean Grey in this movie is another good example, another prime example of this. In the movie, we see she is basically the main villain of this movie, and a lot of people say that she's, like, too evil in this movie, and I guess I can kind of see that, but, like, on the other hand, I feel like this is just a good setup for, like, I guess this is a good setup for people not liking, X or mutants just in general. This gives them a pretty good reason. But yeah, Jean Grey in this movie is misguided. She is basically like a criminal or somewhat, evil in this movie, because she doesn't have guidance. Like, we learn in the film that, like, she had a sister and her sister got taken away from her, and I think we also learned that, like, even her mom, like, disowned her because of her powers and everything, and her mom was afraid of her and her sister, and so she got rid of them. And so literally Jean Grey, she doesn't have anyone, so the only thing that she can do is lash out, at people and just be angry and everything. And that makes sense. And by the end of the film, we get that really heartfelt scene of Aunt May talking to Jean Grey inside of Peter's mind, obviously, because Aunt May's dead. But we get that really heartfelt scene of Aunt May telling, Jean Grey that, like, even though you're special, even though you're unique and different, and people might hate you because of that, you can still be a good person. You can still be a person who does the right thing, and, despite, your powers or your powers feeling like a curse or like whatever. And then we get another scene of Peter talking to Jean Grey, and we get that scene of Peter telling Jean that she's not alone, and that Peter, even though Jean Grey might feel all alone, Peter can relate to Jean, connect with Jean in that moment. And I thought that scene was really nice and well done and everything. Even the Hulk in this movie, like, the Hulk, like, even though they don't really focus on it, like, really at all, like, the Hulk in this movie is really just like he's the Savage Hulk. We get to see the Punisher and Spider-Man take on the Savage Hulk, and that scene is really cool. But even you could say that the Hulk is like a metaphor for isolation and loneliness, like, just from the origins of the character. The Hulk, or Bruce Banner, spends a lot of his time alone because he's not able to connect with anyone, because he is the Hulk, and he's afraid that if he becomes the Hulk, he'll just destroy everything and destroy his, life, or Bruce's life, essentially. And so that's why he chooses to isolate himself as well. And they don't dive into that in this movie specifically, but that is another example of that. And I guess also Yelena, Florence Pugh's character in this movie, I guess you could also relate her to I don't know, like, I feel like her character was just in this is a side tangent. I feel like her character was just in this movie. Like, we have that scene of Spider-Man and Yelena, like, in some pool, and they're half naked. I don't know. But I guess you could also say, like, Yelena, has a past of, like, not having the family, or her found family is the Thunderbolt, or like whatever. So you could also say, like, she ties into that as well. And so, but yeah, we also have the stuff with MJ and Ned and them not remembering who Peter is, and that takes a toll on Peter throughout this movie. But we get two scenes that I want to call out specifically. The first scene is of MJ and Peter when MJ finds the letter that Peter wanted to give to MJ and everything, telling them that he's Spider-Man and everything that happened. And MJ finds it and confronts Peter about it, and Peter ends up telling MJ that, yeah, we knew each other, we loved each other, we were in a relationship, and Peter confesses to MJ in this moment that he still loves her. And I thought they handled this really well, because I thought they were going to handle this in a different way. But they handled this, I think, this scene really maturely and well, with MJ being like, hey, I know you love me and everything, but bro, I don't even know you. And that felt so, I felt so bad for Peter in that moment. But they don't, like, dwell on it. Like, they dwell on it, or they, it's a thing in the movie, but, like, Peter is not, like, he doesn't magically get the girl at the end just because he's Spider-Man or whatever. I mean, realistically, yes. MJ doesn't remember Peter, so why should she, love him and everything? And that scene, it's like, for Peter, yeah, that sucks. That hurts. But that's, like, the reality that Peter has to deal with. But then we get another scene of MJ, inviting Peter to come meet Ned, and for all three of them to hang out. And we get that scene of Peter in his Spider-Man costume. It's funny that he's in his Spider-Man costume, just hanging out, building Legos on a on a couch, and he's like talking to Ned, and they were like, making funny quotes towards each other, and like, even though Ned doesn't know that him and Peter used to be best friends, like it's just instantaneous. It's like they click with each other, and they're able to rift off each other and have a good time, or a fun time. And I feel like that scene is a good example of connection being that, like, just this one moment, just him having this one conversation with Ned and MJ inside of their apartment was enough to make him feel, like there was a weight lifted off his shoulders in that moment. And sometimes it really does, be like that. Sometimes it's really, all it takes is a conversation with a person, or like going out and talking to people to uplift whatever doubts you had about, trying to connect with people in the first place. And I feel like, a lot of us, struggle with that. I struggle with that. I struggle with, getting out there and meeting new people or talking to people, but like, or reconnecting with people. But when you do, and when it's successful, it feels really, really, really good. It feels really, really nice. But I think the last couple of scenes that I wanted to talk about is the scene at the hospital with Frank and Peter, that I thought was really, really nice. I feel like at this point, Frank learns to trust people a little bit, even if it's just Peter in this moment. He's able to reconnect, or Frank in this moment is able to connect with someone, we get that scene of Frank wearing the Spider-Man mask, and like the crowd outside thinking that Frank is Spider-Man and everything. And I feel like that scene is a good example, another great like thing of like, Frank's never really had this, like Frank's like a war veteran, and like they have like this whole thing, and they explore it in the Punisher TV show, but just like his character in general is like, he was a war veteran, and like most times war veterans, when they come home, they have a sense of like, I guess, PTSD, right? Or they feel like, they come home and their actions or what they did are not celebrated, or they're not like they don't matter, essentially. And in this moment, it was nice to see that Frank's, even if, he's not actually Spider-Man, like people were praising him and like making him feel like awesome in that moment. And everything, and that scene was really cool. But then I think the last scene that like really strikes a chord with me is that end credits scene, man. I don't know what it is about that end credits. I think it's the combination of the song that they play, but also just like I don't know, when it comes to superhero movies just in general, usually end credit scenes are like, super animated and upbeat, and they have like a really like upbeat song going on in the background as like, I don't know, some cool animation plays in the background or like whatever. But like this felt so much like personal and everything. And just having people like random like shots of like civilians or like New Yorkers like living their lives, interacting with each other and everything, that also felt so like, I can't put my finger on it, but like that somehow, yeah, that ties back into the idea of connection. All these people just like interacting with each other, like living or like just having a good time and everything. That's just so like important, you know. It's important that like we don't isolate ourselves, you know. Like and sometimes it can be hard because as you get older, it's kind of hard to actually meet new people and connect with people just in general as you get older, you know, as you become an adult and you have more responsibilities and everything. And I get that, but like always try to make room for, you know, some connection in your life, whether that be, you know, reconnecting with a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time, or meeting a new person, or trying to meet new people, you know, and having, even if it's just like having a conversation with a random stranger in the moment, like just try those things, you know, because they are important and everything. And so, yeah, man, this movie, just like the themes of loneliness, depression, connection, they all just struck a chord with me. And I really love that this movie dives into those ideas through Spider-Man, but also just the other characters in this movie. But yeah, man, that's all I really wanted to talk about in this movie. Leave down in the comment sections below, have you seen Spider-Man Brand New Day? And if you have seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, did any of the things that I talked about in this video relate to you? Did you feel the same things after watching Spider-Man Brand New Day? Or did you have different takes or opinions on the story of this movie than I did? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment sections below. And yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, and I will see you guys on the next one. So yeah, bye.